I will show you the basic concepts of adaptive cards in the next 30 minutes, but most of all, I will do a lot of live demos for sure. Great idea on Friday the 13th, but we are really brave and it will all go well, I'm sure. My name is Roman Schackerl. I am founder and CEO of Software. We're a team of 20 people focusing on custom development with .NET, Angular, and Azure. And furthermore, I'm Microsoft MVP since 2014. So what are adaptive cards? Adaptive cards, you can see them on the left. So adaptive cards are little lightweight UI elements, snippets of UI that you can create. And although you have just a few controls available, so it's not like a Teleri collection or something like that. It's really a small collection of controls that you can use, like a text block or an image or things like that. So although you have just a few controls, you can create nice looking cards, as you can see, with just a bit of creativity. Behind the scenes, it's JSON. So when you are creating an adaptive card, you have to create a JSON object. And I will show you several ways how to create this JSON object without typing it on your own. So there are designer available and things like that. I will show you in this session. And when you create your adaptive card, it's important to know that you have to deal with words like that. So it's not about pixel perfect design. It's not about specifying that your headline should be written in Times New Roman and with a font size of 30 pixels. It's more about specifying your intention. So you want to have a large text, for example, or you want to have the intention color. And so you don't decide the end result. It's a bit like Markdown, if you wish, from a conceptual perspective. But you give your intention and you define your layout in a JSON file, and then you give that JSON file to a rendering SDK, and he does all the rest for you. So talking about rendering SDKs, there are a lot of them. And as you can see on that list, you can use adaptive cards when you are a mobile app developer, for example. So you can use them in iOS or Android. Or if you're a web developer, you can use the JavaScript SDK to render your adaptive card in a web app. Or if you're a desktop developer and you use WPF or UWP, you can use those rendering SDKs to integrate your adaptive card in your WPF application, for example. So that's the main idea. Define a snippet of UI, just a little card in JSON, and hand it over to a rendering SDK so that he can decide how it should look like. And a rendering SDK can decide based on several things. So for example, dark theme or light theme shouldn't be a problem. You have to define your adaptive card once, and the rendering SDK should handle the rest. So the really cool thing about this JSON definition is that it gives us some powerful options. So think of the following scenario in a web app scenario. Maybe you have a web API, and this API delivers raw data at the moment. But maybe it could be a great idea to add some more endpoints that deliver some visual representation of your data as well. So you could send some adaptive cards from the server to the client and use the rendering SDK on the client, for example, in your Angular application, to display the adaptive card to your users. And that's a great thing, because now we can add some UI component to our microservices, maybe, if you wish. So especially in microservice architectures, I found it a great idea to think about adaptive cards in some scenarios. And I will show you one real live sample where we use that, and then we try to build it on our own. I've opened a software that is called Audis, and Audis is used during a phone call to help the people asking the right questions. And you could imagine using it in an IT support hotline, for example, or in emergency dispatch centers. And the sample, the question catalog I've brought to this demo is in German. I'm sorry for that, but it's from an emergency dispatch center. And imagine we have a traffic accident where a truck is involved, and then we ask some questions. For example, if there are dangerous goods loaded. And now adaptive cards come in, because with every single step in that question catalog, we send the knowledge to our backend, and we send it to 20 plus backend services, and each and every service is just responsible for a small area. So for example, we have a dangerous goods service, and this dangerous goods service tries to give information or hints whenever dangerous goods are involved. And the rest of the time, this service is just silent. Now, when I provide the number of this orange card and I hit on next, then we see on the right side an adaptive card coming in, because that card is sent from our dangerous goods service and providing some additional information in our timeline. And that's a great thing to use from my point of view, because now on the server side, we decide the visual representation and the client is just rendering it. And that's an area that helps us a lot. So let's create something like that together. Let's switch to Visual Studio. I've created a .NET 5 web API. It's always a great idea to bring out new .NET versions 2 days before a talk, but keep your fingers crossed. We have a .NET 5 API, and I've just changed a few things. So for example, in the startup class, I added course policy, and I added the support for static files in here. But and I added some images as well, and some NuGet packages. I will refer to that later. And usually when I'm creating the API template in Visual Studio, the first thing I'm doing is deleting this weather forecast controller that is generated automatically. And most of the time, I'm not creating weather forecast applications. But in that scenario, in that demo, I will leave it and I will extend it, because now for the template, it's just delivering data, right? So that's the result.
Roman, you're currently on mute. Somebody was probably funny or something.
Thank you. Since the beginning or since when?
Just the last
30
2 minutes.
or something.
Okay, so talking about the weather forecast controller that is already available in the Visual Studio template for APIs. And I added an additional action called getCardAsync with a route of card. And I copied just the code, the sample code from the template that is generating a random forecast for the next 5 days. And now I want to provide an adaptive card through that action. And I have added a NuGet package called Adaptive Cards. And this is the SDK for .NET that enables us to create adaptive cards in .NET. Now let's take a look how that works. Let's create a new adaptive card. Let's say adaptive card. And we have to specify the adaptive schema version. Currently it's 1.3. And I'll take that. And then I can add some controls to this adaptive card. So by calling card.body.add, I can add, for example, an adaptive text block to it. And let's set some properties. Let's set the text, hello bootcamp. Let's define the weight. And now you can see this enumeration. So we don't specify the exact number of boldness factor. We just say, let's make it a bit bolder, please. And then we specify maybe the size as well. Let's make it extra large. All right. That I've created my card, and you can imagine that we can now add some more controls if we have some time. And then we say our card.toJSON, and now we get a JSON representation of our object model. And exactly that JSON is transferred to the client with my web API now. So let's check if that works. Let's call this endpoint/card. And here it is. Here's my adaptive card. And now I will try to create an Angular client that uses this adaptive card and shows it to our users. So let's copy that URL and let's switch to a small Angular application I've created. It's just the CLI and a new Angular project with one additional NPM package called adaptive cards that is added already in my package JSON. Let's switch to my app component and as you can see here, I have already my HTTP service available. Let's make it a bit larger so that you can see it. And the first thing I'm doing is getting this card from our backend. All right. The thing I will do is create an adaptive card, and let's create it right here. And this class comes from the package that I've shown you just a few seconds ago. And then we can call card.parse, and we provide the JSON from above, and we want to parse it to an adaptive card. And then we call card.render, and this renders the card to a target HTML element, and I've also prepared for that. So my adaptive card wrapper is just the div in my app component HTML file that I'm using right now. So with those 4 lines of code, I'm getting the adaptive card from my new .NET 5 backend. I'm creating a new adaptive card. I'm parsing the JSON and I'm rendering it to our HTML element. Let's see if that works. And let's switch to the Angular client. And here it is. Boom. Here's our first adaptive card. You might say that could have been done without adaptive cards as well to show a text on your client. But I hope you got the idea that it's cool that you can now decide on the server how this adaptive card looks like, and the client just renders it. Let's make it a bit more sophisticated, and let's show you the designer for adaptive card. Let's go on adaptivecards.io, because there you have a menu called designer, and now you have a visual designer to create your adaptive card. And the good thing about that is you can use the designer in your own web app as well, because it's available through an NPM package. So you can integrate it in your web app if you wish. And now we can use this what you see is what you get designer to design our weather forecast adaptive card that we want to show to our clients. Let's make the size a bit larger, and let's add a container. And let's add a text block. This text block should be the date, so 2020, November the 13th. Let's make this text a bit bolder and also a bit larger. And then let's add a column set, so we can have some columns and add it to the, I want to add it to the container, so it's a bit tricky. Now. And this column set can be used to add 2 columns. And in the left column, I want to insert an image. This image is already delivered by our backend, sunny.png. Those icons are provided by flaticon.com, by the way, so you can use them if you want to. And I insert this URL right in my designer. It's a bit large, so let's set the column width to 50 pixels, okay. And let's add some more text blocks on the right. So I want to have a text block for the temperature. Let's say 17. Would be nice if it were 17 degrees today. Size, that's the one I'm looking for. 17, and that's the summary. So it could be sunny, for example, with none spacing. Just a few clicks in my designer to create an adaptive card in here. And then I have the card payload right in this designer available to copy. And I copy this text that was generated based on my design. And I switch to my backend, add one more file to my .NET backend, add new item, a JSON file. Let's call it forecast.json. Let's insert, let's paste the whole adaptive card that we generated in the designer. And now we can do something different, because now we don't create the card in an object model, but we just get the card from this file. So let's call system.io.file.read all text async. And let's read this file, and let's provide this adaptive card to our client. We have to await it. We have to make the method asynchronous. Okay, so should work. Let's check the backend first. Weather forecast /card. Oops. Doesn't look that good. Cards. Let's check again. Yeah, here it is. Let's go to our Angular client, hit F5, and now we get the weather forecast adaptive card in our Angular client. The problem now is that we have mixed data and design, because now we have one adaptive card, one JSON file, and this JSON file contains the design and it contains the data, and that's a problem maybe. So you can try some string replace or things like that, but there's something better, because you can use the templating engine from the adaptive cards. And I will show you that as well. So let's copy some JSON and let's go back to our designer. On the right-hand side, you have the sample data editor, and I can provide some sample JSON object representing my data object. And that's a forecasts array with 2 forecasts with date, temperature, summary, and so on. And now I want to bind my adaptive card to exactly that data object. So I can click on my container, and I'll set the data context on the right and say, this container should be bound to our forecasts array, not to the first element, but to the whole array. Okay. When I now click on preview mode, you can already see that it now copies that container for each element in our array. So now we have 2 containers in our adaptive card. Let's bind the text blocks. Let's bind this date text block. And I used the following syntax, $date for that. Preview mode, and you can see the date is already there, but let's format it a bit. Format date time can be used to format date time. One more here. So let's try it out. Preview mode. All right. Let's bind the image to the image property in our sample payload. Let's bind the decrease the temperature to temperature C, and I can use another function here. It's called format number, and you can format the numbers with that. And then we have the sunny text, and we change it to a data binding to the summary property. All right, preview mode looks good, and now we have an adaptive card that just contains the design, but has binding expressions to some backend data. Let's copy that and let's paste it to our forecast JSON again. Great. And now we have to bring data and design together on the server side. You can decide if you want to do it on the server side or on the client side, but let's do it on the server side. And that's done by another NuGet package called adaptive cards.templating. So let's create a new card template, new adaptive card template, and let's provide the JSON that contains the design in here. And then let's call card.expand, and expand is the wedding between data and design, if you wish. So let me copy that snippet as well to save time. So now I'm creating a small anonymous object with one property called forecasts and with an array, and the new property is the image property in here to set the URL to our nice looking weather image. And then call card.expand and provide the data to mix those two together, to merge them. And the result is again a JSON string. So now we get back a JSON that contains the design and the data, but using our templating engine. Let's take a look if that works. Let's hit F5 at the back end. Let's hit F5 on the front end. And now you can see we have this weather forecast adaptive card with 5 days forecast. And the good thing about it is if you don't like the forecast, you can hit F5 again until the weather is fine again. And honestly, I think that's the way how weather forecasts are made, because, okay. So that was our first demo, showing adaptive cards created on the backend in .NET 5, bringing it to a web app using Angular and using the rendering SDK with just a few lines of code to bring the adaptive cards to your users. The second demo I will show you is the following. imagine the following scenario. Let's talk about bots a bit. And it's the end of month, and we are ready to send invoices to our customers. And maybe we have some kind of Excel sheet ready that is exported from our time tracking software, and we see for each and every project how many hours we have worked in the last month. And now we want to get feedback from the teams of project 1, project 2, project 3 to approve those hours before sending out the invoices. And we could call them for sure, or things like that. But we want to use bots, and we want to use Microsoft Teams for that. So the goal is to send some nice little adaptive cards to our Teams channels so that the team can approve or ask for some delay. And as soon as they approve one line, we want to write those informations back to our Excel file automatically. And we will use Power Automate Flows for that. And if you don't know Power Automate Flows, I'll take a look at it. It's a cool thing, as Martina already mentioned in the keynote, to create some workflows without having the need of writing code for that. Let's switch to I have to find my in private window. Here it is. To my demo. Here's the Excel sheet, and yes, as you can see, there's no approval yet. And then I go to my flow, and I've prepared it already for this demo. So I created a new flow that is manually triggered, and the first thing it does is listing rows present in my Excel sheet. And then for each row in the Excel sheet, I'm going through, and I try to find a channel in Teams that is named exactly as the project ID is. Yeah, so that's my first goal. So I have to call this building block called list channels from Teams and iterate through it. And then I could add a condition. Let's do that together. And say, I want to find out if there's a channel whose channel name is equal to my project ID in the Excel sheet. And if that's the case, we have found a channel in Microsoft Teams that is suitable for sending out our message. So if yes, add an action. And then you can see when clicking on a Microsoft Teams, you have lots of building blocks. For example, post an adaptive card to a Teams channel and wait for a response. And that's exactly what we want to use, because we want to send an adaptive card and we want to get a response from the users. So let's choose the team. And let's choose a channel, and this channel should be set dynamically. So we want to use the channel ID from above. And then we have to enter a message, and this message can now be an adaptive card. So let me copy that. I have prepared an adaptive card for that. Be aware that you have to create cards in version 1.2 if you want to use Microsoft Teams or the bot framework for that. And then we have an update message. Let's say thank you as soon as the user provides an answer. And let's say yes, that he should update the card as soon as the answer is sent. After that, if we got an answer, add a new action, an Excel online action. Let's say update a row. And now I have to provide some more information. So the location is OneDrive, the document library is OneDrive, as I've said. The file is found here, timesheet approval. The table is table 1 because there's no other table. And then we have to specify the key column in this Excel sheet. So we give him a hint how to find the correct row. Let's choose project ID for that. And let's search the project ID based on our project ID from above. And now we can set each and every column in this Excel sheet dynamically. So let's say the approval column should be filled out with the approval answer that we got from our adaptive card. It's defined in the adaptive card as a choice element. And approved by should be the display name of the Microsoft Teams user that approved our answer. Great. So before trying it out, let's go back to our adaptive card, and it's important to make it in that order because otherwise the flow designer crashes. Currently we see billable hours. I want to have some variables in here. So let's put in some variables from our Excel to create a nice looking adaptive card. And project name. All right. Hit save. And let's test it. let's see if this workflow works. Save and test. Run flow as soon as it's possible. All right, and now we can see what's happening. So the workflow is already running, and I'm switching to my Teams channel. And as you can see, we have 3 channels called Project 1, Project 2, Project 3, and all those 3 channels have new messages. And when I click on them, you can see we now got a timesheet approval requested card. Currently, we see 154 billable hours for Project 1. Is that correct? And now I say, yes, that's correct. Approve it and send that message. Great. And clicking on Project 2, for example, and say, oh, come on, give me some more days to check, ask for a delay, send. And now, going back to our Excel sheet, it takes 30 seconds to a minute maybe until this Excel sheet is updated automatically. So don't get nervous. Here it is. Now we see the response coming back from our adaptive card, answers directly written in our Excel sheet, and we've automated that flow without having the need of calling each and every team if the hours are correct. Using adaptive cards, getting some user input, using Microsoft Teams, and using Power Automate Flow. So that was adaptive cards in action. I tried to bring as much as possible to that 30 minutes, showing you some concepts, but for sure showing you some demos how to use adaptive cards in your web apps or using them when you are creating bots or working with Microsoft Teams. I hope you enjoyed the session. The next session is about using Azure App Configuration with .NET and with Christian Nagel, so be ready to join. And if there are any more questions, I will stay in that channel for discussions. Thank you, and have a nice day here at the Microsoft 365 Dev Bootcamp.